If you haven't noticed from my videos and from other people's videos about driving Tesla's Full Self-Driving 12, and if you haven't tried it yourself, let me tell you, Full Self-Driving 12 is amazing. But there are still problems and I still disengage pretty much every day. Let's take a look at the top 10 reasons for why I still disengage Full Self-Driving and how hard I think it's going to be for Tesla to fix each one. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I am obviously very excited about the potential for Tesla's full self-driving. It's amazing to hear that Elon Musk and Tesla are saying that they're going to reveal the robotaxi itself, which will have no steering wheel and no accelerator and brake. If you haven't caught that video, definitely check it out. But while this is all really great news, and version 12 is way better than version 11 was, I still disengage a lot. And I want to discuss the specific reasons why, and also talk about how hard I think it's going to be for Tesla to fix each one of these. I'm going to break this down into two categories. One of them is what I call accelerator push interventions. In other words, if you imagine the car sitting at a stoplight and it didn't go, and I push the accelerator to force it to kind of go, that would be the first kind of intervention. I think that's a pretty minimal intervention. The second one is a full intervention when I completely take over from the vehicle and I drive myself for a period of time. So those are obviously much more significant interventions. So I'm going to start with the accelerator press interventions with number 10, and that is stop signs. If you remember back to version 10 of Tesla's full self-driving, way back in ancient history, the car used to come up to a stop sign, and if nobody else was around, it would kind of roll through and then continue on. But NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, stepped in and said that Teslas have to stop for a full second at every stop sign before they're allowed to go, even if it's an empty intersection that they're going into. So this is something that would be very easy for Tesla to fix, because basically they made it happen because NHTSA forced them to, and it would be something super easy for them to fix, because apparently, according to Ashok Elluswamy, approximately 0.5% of the population of the United States actually come to a full stop at stop signs. Yes, that's not 5%, that's 0.5%. It is a tiny number of people that actually stop at stop signs. So this would be super easy for Tesla to fix. Basically, they could just flip a switch as soon as NHTSA allows them to do that. And I've heard that NHTSA is actually researching the data, and they might relax the rules and, allow you to roll through it like 1 mile an hour or something. So that would be amazing news if that actually happens. So number 10 should be really easy for Tesla to fix when they're allowed to. The number 9 reason I disengage is when my Tesla is too unassertive going into an intersection. Most often I find that this happens when the Tesla is making a left turn from a stop sign or stoplight sort of situation, but it can happen when it's going straight as well. And what I mean by this is that the car kind of creeps into the intersection slowly and then accelerates more rapidly as it gets through the intersection. Whereas we humans, generally speaking, we want to, when you decide to go, you go. You don't slam it on and scream out of the intersection, right? You're not screeching your tires, but you're definite about it. You don't want anybody around you potentially that could be interacting with you to have any confusion about what you're doing. You're accelerating into the intersection. You're like, yep, I'm here, I'm going, and this is exactly what I'm doing. So there shouldn't be any hesitancy once the vehicle actually decides to go. So this is something that I think should be relatively easy for Tesla to fix, but it has been around for multiple generations of the software, so it might be a little more difficult than I think. But when this happens, I usually press the accelerator pedal to sort of encourage the car to go through the intersection a little bit more assertively. I want to introduce you to an awesome AI tool for productivity, Magical, who is kindly sponsoring today's video. Magical is a free AI-powered productivity extension that has completely changed how I manage my time. Let me show you how it works. One of my biggest time-consuming tasks is writing emails for both my YouTube channel and my startup, Artomatic. It seems like there's a never-ending stream of admin work that needs to be done. This is where Magical comes in. With Magical's templates feature, I can create shortcuts for frequently used text, saving me hours each week. Whether it's responding to emails, answering direct messages on X or LinkedIn, or working up scripts from my videos, Magical's templates make it all so quick and easy. Magical also helps me keep up with new contacts and track details of people for future reference. It's easy to update your CRM in one click with Magical, whether it's for personal use or for work. This is great if you need to get information from multiple web pages, and Magical pastes it all into a spreadsheet. Instead of copying everything manually, Magical can do it all for you, making data entry an absolute breeze since it's powered by AI. Magical can, of course, do a lot more, like AI Reply, which replies contextually to entire emails for you in a second. The main thing about Magical is it's designed to save you time. So if you're looking to boost your productivity and automate your workflow with AI, I highly recommend checking out Magical. It's free and it'll save you hours of work each week. Be sure to check the link in the description below to try out Magical for yourself. Get Magical for free and save 7 hours a week of busy and boring work. work. Thanks again to Magical for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get to it. All right, turning from accelerator presses to full disengagements, reason number 8 that I take over from my Tesla is U-turns. Now, this is something that version 12 actually will do sometimes, but it's a little on the sketchy side and I don't quite trust it yet. So what do I mean by that? I mean, it doesn't really crank the wheel over quite hard enough. So if it's trying to make a U-turn, it'll kind of ease its way into the U-turn, and I'm afraid it's going to actually hit the curb or have to do some sort of weird 3-point turn or something, and it doesn't reverse. Hint about another reason I disengage. But anyway, I'm scared that the car is not going to complete the U-turn, and so I often will take over when it's doing that. Now, U-turns are relatively infrequent things, at least where I live, so I don't get that many chances at it, but it is something that makes me nervous when it happens, and I'm always kind of on edge, and I might disengage a little bit too quickly and not allow the car to try it. But also, U-turns are very scary because you're doing it in front of often approaching traffic that's coming at you very quickly, so I don't want any kind of screw up. So anyway, this should be relatively easy for Tesla to fix. They just basically have to turn the wheel harder when the car wants to do a U-turn so it can do it more quickly and more confidently. I think they should be able to solve that, and for all I know, it's already solved at this point because, like I said, I don't get that many U-turns, but I have disengaged recently with U-turns. Reason number 7 for me disengaging is parking. This is something that the Tesla will actually do. It's really cool. You know, when you stop the car, it actually pops up a bunch of parking places. You pick it, you say start, and it actually parks, and it does a really good job now. But the problem is that that is not part of full self-driving. You have to disengage full self-driving and, you know, stop and wait for it to identify the parking spaces, and then you select one and then it auto parks. So what I want for no disengagements is for the car to actually park itself without my having to interact with it at all. This should be very easy for Tesla to fix because basically they just remove the part where I pick a parking place and press start. They just remove those 2 steps and it just does it automatically. That should be really easy. And bonus reason, we'll call this 7B, is actually smart summon, and that is the opposite of parking. That's like if I'm at a grocery store, my hands are full of groceries, I want to summon the vehicle over, or if it's raining or something like that and I don't want to walk out to the parking place, I should be able to summon the vehicle and it should drive right up to where I am and pull over and stop and maybe open up the rear hatch or something like that, depending on what I want. This is supposedly coming very soon, so again, this should be very easy for Tesla to fix, but it's something that would be super cool and it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm disengaging, which is why I didn't count it for the top 10, but it is a nice feature to add to the fully autonomous driving experience. The number 6 reason for me to disengage my Tesla is that it doesn't pull into the driveway. So I get to my house and it just stops on the other side of the road and it just sits there and waits. So it should just pull into the driveway, and then even better would be to actually pull into the garage and park itself automatically there. So that does require a disengagement. I can go all the way home with no disengagements, but the last like 30 feet, I have to disengage, turn into the driveway, and then go into my garage. So it would be super cool if the car could just go straight to my garage, like into the driveway, right into the garage, and do it all itself with 0 touches of the steering wheel or accelerator or brake. All right, we're halfway through the list. Be sure to stick around for number 1 because I bet if you have driven full self-driving, it's the biggest reason that you disengage yourself. The number 5 reason I disengage my Tesla is that it can't go into reverse still. Now, oddly enough, it can definitely go in reverse when I'm doing the auto parking feature, but in terms of full self-driving, let's say it gets stuck and it's like, you know, stuck like this, has to do a 3-point turn, it can't reverse to then allow it to do a 3-point turn. Can't reverse out of a parking place or something like that. So that's a significant detriment in the way that Teslas are able to drive because reverse is important. You don't use it all that often, but I bet you use it pretty much every drive at some point to be able to maneuver around a parking lot or get out of your garage or something like that. Speaking of which, it can't even get out of my garage because it needs to reverse the very first thing it does. So in order for that full self-driving experience, reverse is completely necessary. How hard is this going to be for Tesla to fix? I think it'll be relatively easy because, again, it's very low speed. It already does it for the auto parking. It's just a feature that they need to enable. The number 4 reason that I disengage is poor lane choice. So what do I mean by that? Let's say there are 3 lanes going the same direction and there's a bunch of cars in the far right lane, there's a bunch of cars in the middle lane, and there's no cars in the far left lane. Which lane do you pick as a good human driver? You should pick the far left lane, unless for some reason you're turning right immediately after that. But let's just say you're going straight. The problem is that the Tesla will sometimes pick that left lane, but sometimes pick the middle and sometimes pick the right. So it's not making good lane selection, and I'm a fairly, assertive driver. I don't like to sit in traffic behind a bunch of other cars, so I will always disengage at that point and I will pull into the more empty lane. And FYI, every time I do that, I always push the button and I give Tesla feedback and say, poor lane selection, you should fix this problem. As for how hard is this going to be for Tesla to fix this, it should be relatively easy because this should be in the data set. Good drivers should generally pick the most free lane when there are not other mitigating circumstances. So this should be something that it solves over time. Already 12 does way better than 11 did. So hopefully by the time we get to 12.4, 12.5, etc., we'll get the car picking the better lane more and more often. All right, we're up to the top 3. I believe these are going to be significantly more difficult for Tesla to fix these issues. So the last 7, I think, are going to be fairly easy for Tesla to fix. They're already in the process of fixing some of them. But the top 3, I think, are going to be significantly more problematic. The number 3 reason for me to disengage is communication. What do I mean? I mean, I don't know what the Tesla is thinking, and the Tesla doesn't know what I'm thinking. We're unable to communicate with each other right now. So here would be an example of this. Let's say I'm sitting in an intersection and I need to make an unprotected left turn, and I don't know if the car is creeping forward to try to actually go out into traffic when it looks like there might be a car that would collide with it if it does that, or whether it's creeping forward to get a little bit of visibility or whatnot. I would love it if the car under those circumstances would say, I'm thinking about this, I'm creeping forward to get more visibility, I'm not gonna go yet. Oh, it looks like it's clear, I'm gonna go in 3, 2, 1. Something along those lines, some sort of communication when it's a dicey situation. I don't want it all the time. I certainly don't want the car just sitting here blabbing to me constantly when it's like, I'm in a lane, I'm going straight. I'm in a lane, I'm still going straight, right? That's not necessary. But under those kind of dicey circumstances where I could become unconfident about what the car is doing, if it told me what it was thinking, that would be fantastic. And of course, the opposite is true. It would be amazing if I could talk to the car and I could communicate with it about what I think about what the car is doing. Like maybe I could say like, hey, you should go now. It's clear. You can definitely go now. Anyway, this is a more complicated thing to fix because it's a more complex issue, but I think attaching a large language model to the Tesla, for example, Grok, which is now open source, by the way, but I hope that Tesla is getting advanced versions of Grok 1.5 and 2.0, etc., and that they're building it into their vehicles and that they're working on that right now, because we definitely want a large language model interface with our vehicles. So this is a difficult problem for Tesla to fix, but it's probably already in the works and probably isn't going to be that difficult for them to solve. At least the car to human version of it should be relatively straightforward. The number 2 reason, and I bet a lot of you thought it was going to be number 1, but that is poor navigation information. I complain about this all the time in my beta drives. I'm always like, what is it doing? Why is it in this lane? Why is it picking this direction to go? It should go a different way. It doesn't have good navigation information. And by that, I don't mean the general outline of where it's going. Sure, that's all good, but I mean specific lanes to be in, when to get over there, all of that kind of stuff is necessary for the vehicle to have in order to drive in a way that will reduce the number of interventions down to close to 0. This is speculation, but I believe the problem comes down to the fact that they get all of their information from Google and then they have to transfer it over to Tesla's internal system. And what Tesla should do instead is they should pull everything in-house and do all of the navigation. Aside from the most basic outline of where to go in terms of roads to take, all the rest of the navigation should be done by Tesla internally, and that would resolve a lot of the troubles. So what sort of things should Tesla internalize and put in their own navigation system? Things like speed limits, routing, IDing temporary problem areas like construction, potholes, etc. And then they should train an entire separate neural network stack just on proper routing and navigation. And of course, this is something that's right in Tesla's wheelhouse. Elon Musk just today talked about how Tesla should be valued as an AI and robotics company, not an auto company. And hey, guess what? Data, neural networks, training, all of that stuff is right in Tesla's wheelhouse. So they should pull as much navigation as possible into Tesla themselves and stop using as much as possible from Google. So difficult, yes. Hopefully they're already working on it. Impossible, absolutely not. And I hope that they're not stuck in a weird relationship with Google where they have to use them for a certain amount of navigation information, because that will slow them down. Otherwise, I think Tesla can resolve this issue relatively quickly. And that's almost my number 1 reason for disengaging my Tesla. And speaking of number 1 reason, drum roll please, it doesn't drive like a local. So let's consider two things. Number one, you're using Tesla full self-driving in a city you've never been in before. And many of you have experienced this, and I've talked to you guys about this. In those sorts of circumstances where you don't know exactly where you're going and you don't know the lie of the land and all of the secret tips and tricks and all of that stuff, I find that full self-driving is fantastic. I don't disengage all that often. I just let it do its thing. Very, very different experience in Athens for me because I know this city really, really well. I drive it all the time, these regular routes. So I know every little local tip and trick and where to be and what lane to be in and at different times of day where I need to be and all of that kind of stuff. The mood of the traffic, all of those kinds of things. I have a lot of local information, which makes me a significantly better driver in Athens than I am in, say, Peoria, Illinois, that I'm not used to driving in. So this is a complex issue. This is something that is going to be difficult for Tesla to solve because what they're doing is they're training a statistical model based on the data from the entire United States and Canada likely as well, which means statistically in general, it's going to be a good generalist driver, but it's not going to be a highly efficient local driver. And again, that means when I'm driving in a place that I'm not used to, I'm going to be like, fantastic, you're doing an amazing job. When I'm driving in my local city, I'm going to be like, nope, not so good because you should have gotten over here right now because at this time of day, the traffic dictates you have to get over into this lane in order to get onto the highway right here. If you do it later than that, you're going to have to negotiate with traffic and you could actually miss your turn. So how can Tesla fix this? There's probably a number of ways, but in my mind, the best way to fix this is to internalize a large language model as a form of memory. And what I mean by that is actually that the large language model becomes sort of a script, like a conversation that is a local conversation. So let's say that it has a John drives from home to work conversation in its ChatGPT window. And of course, if it's using Grok, it's like its Grok window, but whatever. So it's got this thing, it's got this conversation that's gone on. And every time I drive it and disengage or it learns something new, it puts in, now this would not be really intelligible to humans, but it would put in some sort of text that would tell it about things. It would be like, oh, you know, what I should have done here is I should have gotten over 1/4 of a mile sooner so that I was set up properly to make this right-hand turn. Or I should have gotten into this more empty lane right now. Or at sunset, we're going to be driving straight into the sun at this particular part of the highway. So expect people to slow down here. That kind of running conversation can serve as a type of localized memory, which is effectively like what I have in my brain as well. And again, that's the reason why I drive better and more assertively in my hometown than I do in a place that I'm not familiar with. And then let's take this one step further. What if this large language model not just had a list of conversations about drives and places and things like that, but it had one of those for every one of the users? So my wife and I have very different driving profiles. And you know, the Tesla, if it drives well for me, is probably not going to drive well for her because I'm much more assertive. I like to get through intersections. I like to always be in the lane with the least amount of traffic. I'm willing to make extra lane changes and stuff to get where I'm going just that little bit faster. She doesn't care about that. So even better than just having a single monolithic version of Tesla's full self-driving would be to use these large language models to have localized knowledge, but also individualized driver profiles. So my profile would be different than hers. And again, it would be some sort of conversation that the car would be maintaining with itself. And as you started up and it said, oh, John's driving right now, I'm going to read this conversation and get a sense of what his driver profile is so that no longer am I driving like a generic statistically good driver. I'm driving like John does. And John is going to be very happy about that. Whereas Lane would not be happy about that. So when Lane drives, it reads in her conversation and it says, oh, I'm going to drive like this. This is the behavior profile. This is what will make her comfortable. She doesn't like a lot of lane changes. She's comfortable with sitting in traffic behind a number of other vehicles. All that stuff is cool. It will change its profile and it will drive like her. Now, is this last thing absolutely necessary? No. Being a good generalist driver is okay, but I feel like in order for Tesla to become that ultimate driver, possibly 10x better than any human driver, it's going to have an incredible amount of local knowledge and a knowledge of the theory of mind of the human being who's sitting behind the wheel. It's going to have to make that person above all else comfortable so that we don't disengage, and that is going to be the ultimate. Is that going to be easy for Tesla to do? No, that will be extremely hard, and that's half of the reason why I put it at number one. The other half is that it's also the main reason that I disengage, is is that the vehicle doesn't behave like me. It doesn't behave like me specifically in Athens, where I really know where I'm going. So how hard will all of this be to get done? I believe the first 7 of the reasons will be done relatively quickly because they're all relatively easy. As far as the top 3, those are going to be more complicated, but if Tesla is already working on this, it could only take them on the order of 4 to 6 months to get this through the training process, get it through quality assurance and all of that stuff, and out to the public. So it might not be that long. It could be this fall where we actually see these cars take off and be driving at a level that is not just as good as the best human drivers, but far superior to them. And odd coincidence, August 8th is the day for the robotaxi reveal. So if my speculation holds true, that puts us at about the 4-month mark. And that means that we could be looking at a vehicle that's driving as well as or better than the best human just in 4 months. So that's well within the time frame that I'm thinking about right here. So those are my top 10 reasons to disengage from Tesla's full self-driving. What are yours? Did I miss anything? Definitely sound off in the comments. Thanks again to Magical for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.